So I'm here with a man that deals with bees, and he has 42 hives. What's your name?
It's Curtis Nelson.
Curtis? So nice to meet you. I'm Brittany Medlin. And tell the people again about how about the queen bees.
So any female larva laid as a female can become a queen. It just depends on what the bees feed it and the size of cell that it's in when it starts out. So the bees will typically make a larger cell and then start feeding that cell, that larva in that cell, royal jelly, and only royal jelly. And they'll put...
What is royal jelly?
Royal jelly is
it like got hormones in it and stuff?
No, well, that I don't know, but it is a more potent feed, if you will. It has more protein and everything else in it. But the bees know to make it and fill that whole cell full of royal jelly when it's a bigger cell and when they're trying to make a queen.
Oh, wow.
So,
and tell me again about how many eggs that they lay and their usefulness. They only live for 6 years. And
so a queen bee will live for 6 years, but typically most beekeepers don't keep a bee laying that long because they start missing cells and they start not doing their job, as readily as they'd like them to. So they'll usually requeen even every year.
Oh, wow.
Some will requeen only every 2 years.
Wow.
But it depends on where they get their queens from and availability. If they make their own, a lot of times they'll requeen even twice a year if they're
Wow.
making their own, so it doesn't really cost them that much money.
Tell them how many eggs that they lay. And
So they'll typically lay during a high nectar flow. They'll lay up to 1,000 eggs a day, each queen.
wow.
And when it's not a high nectar flow and they're not so busy and don't need so many bees renewed, they'll drop down to about several hundred. But typically they will, during when they're really trying to replace themselves, a normal working queen or working bee during a heavy flow, their lifespan is only 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so the replacement of bees is quite a thing. They got to replace themselves, to keep up the workforce to go gather the nectar and the pollen. But
Well, what would you tell people who want to become beekeepers?
don't do it. It's actually hard to keep a bee hive alive.
Right.
Unless you
you've
have
got
all the
42.
equipment.
You've got
Yeah,
42.
and that's not very many as far as
That
it goes.
seems like a lot of bees.
But the guys that I do it with, they have like 200 and,
Oh, wow.
and all that, and that's not even. We're deemed sideliners.
Wow.
That's not even a true beekeeper
Oh, wow.
fashion. But 500 hives to 20,000 hives is basically where
Wow.
most commercial beekeepers are.
Wow.
So we're small potatoes there.
Where are you stationed out of?
The Spanish Fork.
In Spanish Fork. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What else can you tell me about bees?
Well, right now my beehives are down in California. We take them down there for the almond pollination contracts, and then
Oh, wow.
right now they're done with that, and then in about mid-March, end of March, we move them over to where they get the nectar from oranges. So they're making orange honey right
Oh,
now.
wow. How do you ship them? Do you drive them?
On a semi-truck.
Oh, my goodness. How do you make sure that they don't fly out of the semi-truck?
Well, typically at night they don't want to leave the hive, so you load them in the night and you try and truck them in the night. That's not always, available because it takes like 12 hours to ship them, so
Right,
the sun's
right.
going to come up sometime.
Right.
But they put nets over them, really
Oh,
fine
cool.
mesh nets so that they. But typically, while they're driving down the road and the wind and everything else, they stay in their hive.
Oh, wow.
But when the daylight comes, and even though they're trucking, sometimes they'll come out, but they'll be,
Disoriented.
captured under the net, so at least that load of bees stays with that truck. And
Right.
then when you get there, you start unloading them, and it's in the daylight, and they all start buzzing out and coming out and
Oh, my
everything else.
goodness.
But you set them on the ground right by the truck where you've unloaded them, and you try and not move them again until it turns dark again, and
Right.
all the bees find a home to go back to. They're not always in the same hive, but as long as it's your whole truckload, then it's all okay.
Wow.
But yeah, a lot of bees will trade hives, loading and unloading and all that stuff. You just hope that you have as many at the end of the day that you started out with.
Right,
But
right. How many bees are in a hive usually, typically?
a strong hive will have about 60,000 bees in there.
60,000?
Yeah,
Holy buckets of gold.
yeah. 40 to 60,000 is a good strong hive.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all your bee knowledge.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
super
that's
cool.
that's a little bit.
A little tidbit. True.
It takes a lot to know or to have a hive, and that's why I say you can have your own hive in your backyard, but it takes a lot to
Of
keep
work.
the hive going and to overwinter them, to keep them alive during the winter.
How do you keep them alive during the winter?
They keep themselves alive. They hibernate for the whole winter basically, but the thing that makes it hard for a person to become a beekeeper is the fact that there's diseases that come into play. There's
Right.
mites that it's called a varroa mite that
Oh, no.
is a pesticide. What do you call it when they feed on the body of an animal? They're,
Right.
can't think of it right now.
Thinking
but,
of necrosis, but that's like
Yeah,
something
but-
different.
but they attach themselves to the bee itself, and
Like-
they start living off of the fatties and the
Oh, wow.
of the bee itself, and
Yeah.
it will actually kill the bee after a while.
Oh my goodness.
And the way they reproduce, these varroa mites, is they crawl into the cell as the queen lays the egg, and the
And then they-
larva starts growing, and before it's capped, they get in there and they start living off the
Oh,
larva
no.
itself.
Symbiotic. Yeah.
And so the larva dies, and
Oh no.
the varroa mite hatches out, and of course there's several of them now because the female varroa mite laid more than one egg in there,
Oh,
4
no.
or 5, and so that's how they produce.
How do you get rid of them?
There's different chemicals and there's different processes to do it, but that's the thing. They all take like kind of expensive tools and things
Maintenance.
to do that, and the guy that only has 1 or 2 hives can't afford the
Right.
equipment that it takes.
Right, right.
So it's
Isn't it like thousands of dollars to invest in the bee equipment?
yeah, it's quite expensive, especially when you start getting into the stuff that control varroa. But the bad thing about a varroa mite is they also bring along with them other diseases.
Oh, no.
It's not just that they eat the larva and
Right.
are bad for the bee itself, but they also bring with them other diseases, tracheal problems. And a bee kind of has a body just like a human does. They have stomachs, and they have intestines, and all of those things get infected just like ours do. And
Oh wow.
if there's nothing to combat those, then of course they die of different sicknesses just like we do. you know?
Right. Isn't bee honey? Isn't it just basically bee spit? in a very layman's term kind of thing.
It's their own food that's what they survive on is honey.
Yeah.
Honey and pollen to make extra protein to feed the other larvae to bring them
wow.
along. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all this wise information about bees. I didn't know that I'd get
Yeah,
to
you're
run into
welcome.
somebody so cool. So, yeah, thank you.